All right, hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Limestone Home. So we've gotten a lot done between the last episode and this episode. I'll talk about what we've done and what our plans are next. So if you look up in the ceiling here, there are the beams are up. So before I had put blocking in the beams or blocking in the ceiling for these beams. So we had blocking in the ceiling. Then we put up the beams. We just screwed anchors from the top of those blocking into these beams. These beams are purely, what's the word I'm looking for?
Cosmetic.
Yeah. These beams are purely cosmetic. We had extra beams. We were going to have giant trusses in the great room that were going to span the whole open space. And we decided after we framed the house that we liked having just that big open ceiling and not having it being obstructed by big timber trusses. So we repurposed those beams. And you can see on this side, I've notched the stone for the beams to slide into. And in places like that where there's little gaps, I'm just going to mortar around the beams. Pack those joints with mortar so it looks really clean. And we also put beadboard on the ceiling. And all these places that have these joints that are running orthogonal to these beams, I'm going to be putting more trim up there, like pieces that go this way, that cover those seams. And there'll be like a trim, and I'm going to, route on a nice beveled edge or like a profile onto those, and they'll look really nice. These ceilings will eventually be painted. So that beadboard and trim will all be painted. The same color as the wainscoting here, and I think it'll all tie really nice together. So that's the ceilings. All the bedrooms, which basically we have the great room, which is a vaulted ceiling, but then every other room in the house that has these flat ceilings has these beams in it with a beadboard ceiling. So that was a cool thing we decided to do. So maybe if you guys look up here, you'll notice this gap, right, between the beadboard and the top of the stone wall. So there's really two ways there's probably more, but the ways that I considered how to frame on top of these stone walls was, when you hook the roof line, you need to put a top plate on. So the top plate is on there, and that top plate is anchored into the stone using 7-inch bolt anchors. And normally in a house, that top plate and the top of your walls, interior framed walls, are at the same level. So you just put your ceiling on and everything it's flat and there's no gaps, right? But with these, that top plate is sitting on top of the stone, and then we framed the ceilings on top of that top plate. Those joists are coming across and landing on that top plate. And it leaves an 1.5-inch gap between the ceiling and the top of the stone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be packing these joints with mortar. I'm going to tape off the beadboard, pack it with mortar, and then pull the tape off, and it should leave a nice, clean mortar line. The other option you can do is when you are framing out your ceilings, I could have notched the 2x8s that we used to frame the ceiling, and that would have basically brought the bottom of those 2x8s flush with the stone. If you do it that way, then you can't just slide the beadboard behind the stone. If you did it that way, that beadboard would have to be scribed against the stone. And all these places like this where the stone is kind of, undulating all over the place, you would need to scribe your beadboard or whatever you're doing, sheetrock, your ceiling like that. So those are the two options I considered. We went with just the first option, which was just packing these joints with mortar. And I think it'll look good. I mean, we already have these big, thick mortar joints on the walls. And so it's just going to be one more, strip of mortar at the ceiling. So another thing you guys will see behind me is we have sheetrock in the house now. So the whole house, we did 5/8, where we have sheetrock, which is really only the upper half of the walls in all the bedrooms, and then the upper half of the wall in the great room. Those are the only places where we have sheetrock in the house, and it's all 5/8. And in the bedrooms, we did a level 4 finish, and then in the great room, we have a level 5. So in the bedrooms, we are going to be doing all eventually like a Victorian style wallpaper in here. And we'll put the wallpaper on. We're gonna have a 3.5-inch molding here, like a chair rail. And then the baseboards are going to be, I think, around 10 inches. Still deciding exactly my baseboard height, but so we'll have molding here, baseboards down there, and then we're also going to have crown molding on the ceilings. So that's the sheetrock. There's not too much to say. One little quirk about doing sheetrock in a house like this is this kind of thing right here, right? So if you look here, the sheetrock is kind of scribed. Well, we scribed the sheetrock to the profile of the stone, and then when they came in and mudded, they filled, they were able to fill up that mortar even more, or fill up the crack even more with mud. And then I'm gonna go back again before we paint, and I'm filling little places like this where there's little gaps in the mud. I'm just gonna fill it with silicone, fill all the extra little gaps, so then it should just be a nice clean edge going all the way up the stone. So all the places along the walls are scribed like that, and same thing with the this wainscoting here. So I had to scribe this whole thing, and then backfill it with caulking. There's multiple ways to scribe on something like this. I basically just took a piece of wood like this, and then I notched it, and I took a pencil and I held it in the same spot, and I just followed. I would nail on a piece of wainscoting or a piece of tongue groove, and I would just follow the wall, and then you'd have your pencil scribe, and then I would cut that and then fit it against the wall. So that's what's going on here. There's about between an 1/8 inch to in some places like a 1/4 inch gap, and then I just caulked that. So this is all going to be painted, and I think it'll all look really nice when it comes together. Another thing that you guys will notice now is we have hung my doors. So there's a few things about the doors in this house. The first thing is they're all antique, and working with antique doors is kind of difficult. They have warps in them. If your door is warped like this, or like this, like concave or convex, they make kits that will you can put in the door to straighten the door. If your door is warped like this, like where the top, like where this corner and the bottom corner are warped, that's a hard warp to get out. And a lot of times you can't get the warp all the way out. These doors have been warped for probably 50 years, and they're really old doors, and I don't think there's I don't know if there's if I would be really successful trying to take the warps out of these doors. So if you look, I created my jams, and I think these were 1x8 or 1x8 pine boards, and you can see that if you look at this strip of wood here, you can see that at the bottom it gets a lot narrower, closer, right? So this piece of wood is angled. The jams aren't angled, but this little piece of wood is what the door closes against. I forget what this is called, but that's just a little quirk. So these jams were built to the doors to just work with the warp. So now when we close the door, it closes against the wall nicely, but the door itself is actually pretty warped. So I think if I wasn't to point it out to people, and it wasn't like a carpenter who does molding all the time, I don't think most people will notice. I'll always notice, of course, but I didn't glue these on. I just nailed them in. So if we ever did get doors, or wanted to change the door, or if I wanted to try to straighten one better, I could always just pry these off and put a new piece on there. The hinge spacing is standard, and the hinges aren't curved or anything like that. So I'll always be able to use the same hinge slots. Another cool thing about these doors is, if you look here, I only have the hinges part way because I gotta take the doors back off. But these are all the doors in this house. In this house is the Stanley Sweetheart cannonball screw or cannonball hinges. They're just cool old hinges. These are probably from the 30s. They're stamped with a little heart, and it says SW, so Stanley Sweetheart. I think almost all the hinges in this house are Stanley Sweetheart. And I went through and painstakingly found, it's gotta be almost 40 or more hinges. No, I think it's like 50 or 60 hinges. And soaked them in Evapo-Rust, took all the paint off, took all the rust off, sanded them all down, cleaned them up. And then I'm gonna be actually painting these a slightly different color than the molding, than the trim. These will be like a dark, high gloss green color. And I think they'll look good. Okay, and then another cool thing is, if you come in here, so this is our bathroom, like the kids' bathroom. And you can see that, I haven't mentioned this before, but all the doors, all the locks in this house are gonna be rim lock. So this is like an example of a rim lock. So after doors had rim locks, they had mortise slots. So this would be an example of like where you'd put a mortise lock. This is like the precursor to the normal door locks that you see today. But basically like this whole unit would go inside the door, essentially. That's what a mortise lock is, and you'd have your knob and your keyhole here. Well, I want to have all rim locks in this house just because I think rim locks are cool. So I bought 14 or 15 of these rim locks, and I took them all apart, oiled the inside, changed the springs, did all that, and made them functioning again. So all the doors will have rim locks, which is cool. And places like this, you know, I'll probably end up filling these or putting some sort of plate or something over these. Like you can see on the front of this door, I've put an old like East Lake style brass plate that came off of another door we had. So it's just covering up those keyholes. And it kind of looks like it used to be. That's kind of where where the knob used to be on this door. So, you know, it's funny. They used to put knobs a lot lower on doors. I don't know if it's just because people were shorter back then or what, but if you look into how, like one of the things that makes houses look old and doors look old is like the height of the doorknob. For some reason, the doorknobs are always low. If you guys know why, you can put it in the comments, but it's just something I've noticed on a lot of old houses that I've been in. So this door doesn't have any gaps, or it doesn't have any warps, which is nice. You know, I have about an 1/8 gap all the way around, which is cool. And what I had to do, unfortunately, was when I framed this house, I framed the opening sizes, and I framed the door openings to the sizes of these doors. So I knew what door I was going to put in each slot. But what I didn't take into account was our floors. This is full 3-inch thick brick. So it's not thin brick, it's the full thickness brick. And I lost about 3 inches off the height of every door opening. And unfortunately, I'm having to cut down most of my doors. I didn't cut down this door because I had a transom above it. I'll talk about that transom in a minute. Other doors I did have to cut down, and I had to cut them down so much that I ended up cutting through the tenon. So this is like an old mortise and tenon. These old doors, right, they have these mortise and tenons that you can see. And on the other ones where I had to cut them down, where I didn't have a transom, where I could just change the size of the transom, I had to cut through there. So I ended up putting on the doors anyway all these dowels. So all the corners of these doors have these dowels now. And, you know, I'm going to stain these doors and oil them. And I think you will hardly be able to see these dowels. But I put these in anyway because these old doors are, you know, these mortise and tenon joints get loose and then the door sags. So I put all those dowels in. The only other thing that's slightly not standard about these doors is the height. I have maybe almost a 1/2 inch gap under the doors. Most houses you'll have a smaller gap, like maybe 3/8 or even less. But because of our floors and the brick and how the brick is all uneven, I first hung them at a 3/8 gap, or a little bit less than 3/8 gap, and it was just hitting the brick. So I had to raise, so all the doors have a slightly larger gap underneath them, just to make sure that it has the full swing, that it's not hitting any of the unevenness of the brick. So that's the doors. I think they're gonna look really cool. They're solid, old panel doors, Victorian, you know, era. So really cool. All right, I'll talk about these transoms. So the transoms are another thing that make houses look kind of old, and I love transoms. I think they're so cool. Old houses would have transoms to help airflow from like one room to another room. So, nowadays we have central heating and air, and we can just push air throughout the house. Well, old Victorian houses didn't do that, right? You'd have your windows open and you'd have airflow coming through. And so when you have rooms like this, when you have your door closed, like bedrooms or bathrooms or anything like that, you could open up your transom on the top and it would promote airflow throughout the house. So that's why we have transoms. I mean, we have transoms because I just like the way they look. And another cool thing I did with these transoms is there was an old house that was built around in the 1850s in the city next to us in this hill country region. It's a really cool old Victorian house, and the owners were replacing all the windows and some of the doors and some of the transom windows in the house, and they're replacing all of them with vinyl windows, which I won't get into. Seems like a sin to put vinyl windows on a Victorian. But they replaced them all with vinyl windows. And some of the windows were in various states of decay, but most of them were still usable. Some of them were not usable at all. But I bought all windows. It was 27 windows, a few doors, and transom windows for $150. And what I've been doing is I've been using that glass from those windows, which is original glass from the original install in the 1850s. And I've been cutting it and putting it into different places in the house. You can see with this one, right? You can see how wavy it looks and how distorted the glass, how it looks distorted. Those small touches, right? It's a very subconscious thing, I think, for people. When you walk into a house, old houses will have wavy glass, but it's not something that you really notice, but it gives a certain aura to the house, right? So I'm trying to reproduce that through little things like this in our house. One more thing I'll say about these transoms is places where I can, I'm repurposing the old wood from those windows. So some of the ones that were in more of state of decay that were falling apart, I took the wood, ran it on my planer or my joiner, flattened it out, and then I'm repurposing this trim and making it into transom. So this is actually old window trim, so it has a nice, rounded edge on it. But I'm doing things like this where I'm leaving little slots like this. So that slot is where you'd put a rope that would hold the counterweight system in a double hung window. And I'm kind of leaving that in there on purpose. This will be painted. I'm kind of leaving it in there because I think it's cool. I'm trying to take parts of old houses in this area and incorporate them into this house. So it's a new build, but I don't want it to feel like a new build. I want it to feel like an old building. And we're doing various. There's also a lot of little things places like this where these big air returns are. We're doing Victorian style grates like this. These are all big cast iron. You can see how thick it is. Big. Cast iron, plate grates for the air returns. These are grates that we're going to be putting in the bedrooms. These are a little bit newer. These are made by Pacific Register Co., but they're still thick. It's not that thin, cheap metal that they do a lot of times. And then we have a lot of for these air vents in the great room. We have a lot of old cast iron ones of various sizes that will be going into the house. So one more thing I'll talk about, one more door that, I've put up 4 doors so far. Those ones that I was talking about, that were the kids' room and the bathroom doors, those big, wood doors. This is another one that we're using. This is our laundry room door. I think this is cool. We found this old door that's has these big glass panes in it. So this will be our laundry room door, and you'll see this is where the doorknob used to be, but I have the hinges on this side now. I'll have to fill this or do something. I need to cover these somehow or fill them. I could either put a sign that says a brass sign that says laundry, or fill them with wood or something like that. But this has a really nice trim on the front, and I didn't want to, if I was to have this handle on this side, then I'd have to turn the door around, and then it would you'd see the backside, and it's not as nice to look at. So we're doing 3 transoms in this house. We're doing the one above the laundry room, the one above the kids' bedroom, which is I was just talking about, and we have one above our master bathroom. We didn't put one in the kids' bedrooms because we don't want light going in there at night, because they're right off the main room, the great room where we are. We don't have any hallways, so we didn't want light going in there. And then we don't have one for our master bedroom. I thought about doing one for our master bedroom, but then, as you can see, this is our door opening for our master bedroom, and it's this door here. I have yet to clean it up and strip the paint off and re-oil it and finish it, but I think having a square transom, like I'd have to do some sort of hemisphere glass or something, and it was just going to be, I don't know, I think it would look better just to have it not be a transom. So that's going to be its whole thing when I make my molding for this. I'm thinking about ways that I want to do that. I know they make flexible moldings, which I am not doing that. I want it to be wood. So I'll talk about that later when I go to do it. So the last thing I'll talk about is what we're doing for our showers. So this is our master vanity here. It's kind of backed up against this wall. But we have these brass sinks that are coming out, right? So we're gonna have like this sort of thing on the back wall. This is all gonna be a marble tile, like a beveled little mosaic tile. So this whole will be marble, and then our vanity itself, which is this, will also have a white Carrara marble on it. And what you can see, we're gonna, this has like sort of a shape on this edge. So we're getting the marble cut to the profile of this vanity. This is actually like an old buffet. And we're using vessel sinks, so we'll just have to have holes for the drain. But we'll show that later when we start doing it. And then, in the kids' bathroom, the kitchen, behind the master sinks, and then the master shower, you can see I've put up a hardy backer. This is all 1/2-inch hardy backer. And I've already taped and floated the joints with fiberglass tape and thin set. And what I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to be painting on my waterproof membrane. And I'll be doing that, and I'm actually just going to start tiling this week. So, yeah, it's freaking, all those freaking pillows. Yeah. So in here we're doing this whole shower will be like 2 big slabs of this porcelain material that looks like kind of like stone, and this whole wall will be glass, and we're going to be tiling the ceiling as well with just like a white subway tile. We have these old I don't know what they are, 1920s or 30s, like Hollywood Regency lights. They're really cool. So it's going to be a glass pane to here, and I knew that when I designed this house that this window was actually going to be like it's going to be bisecting the shower wall. I knew that was going to happen. And I said I wanted to do it that way anyway because I didn't want to break the symmetry of the windows on the house. The house from the front and the sides is very symmetrical, and I didn't want to have to shift this window. So we're not doing a shower door, it's just going to be a glass wall, and then this part of the glass is just going to be open. And then we're going to be, all this limestone that's left and open is going to be treated. We're going to use some sort of, like Deco Shield or something like that they use on pools, or some of the material that will soak into the limestone and waterproof it. Because we're going to leave these walls just limestone in the shower. I mentioned this earlier when we were building this house, when we were stacking the walls, but we had one of the stones that was like a little bit thinner. So I put that here in the shower. So you can see it kind of steps in here and then steps back out. And this kind of makes a natural a ledge for soap and shampoo. So I'm going to be putting another little piece that comes on here, comes out, and it'll be a nice, cool ledge. Last thing I'll say is for the kids' bathroom and the shower, I'm actually making all the fixtures. So you know, these are not standard spacing. Usually it's like 8 inches on center. These are not inches, they're some of the size that I just thought looked good. And I'm gonna be actually sliding together all the fixtures out of brass and copper in this shower in the master bedroom, or kids' bedroom. So when I do that, I think it's gonna look really cool having that exposed copper. We might have 2 shower heads in here, thinking about it. You know what that's for. And yeah, that's about it. So I think it's coming together. I think it's gonna be really cool when we get the wallpaper up, we get the chair rails up, all the doors trimmed out. It's gonna start really coming together. The wallpaper in here is gonna be like a big mural. It's gonna be like this big mural that comes, and it actually will come from our bedroom. It's like a 3-part mural that comes over, and it's gonna wrap onto this wall here. It's gonna be really cool. So I'm getting into the stage now where I'm starting to think about finishes, and that's what I like to do. My thing that I enjoy doing the most is like doing trim work and trim out and that sort of thing. So lots of stuff to do. There's gonna be lots of stuff I have to do down the road. Like these windows, obviously you can see are not finished. The ledges aren't finished here. Eventually I wanna box out all these windows, have nice trim. You know, right now I'm just focusing on the things that will be able to get us to close our loan, and all these other little things I can work on, you know, after the fact when we close our loan. So, all right, guys. So thanks for watching. If you've gotten to this point in our episode, I know it's just me talking a lot. I'm gonna try to get better about filming me doing work. A lot of times, like when I start doing work, I just get focused on the job and I just start doing it. I don't have any, you know, footage of me actually working. So that's something I'll work on. But if you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions, just leave them down below, and we'll see you for the next episode. Okay, update guys. You can see it's fully eclipsed. The chickens did not go in. They're stumbling out here in the dark.